You are watching the Saber News Channel on ASN Channel 3. This is Look Closer with Elijah Iraheta.
Yesterday, President Trump stood at Dover Air Force Base for a dignified transfer. 4 American service members are coming home, and one of them was Army Private Isabella Gonzalez. She was 19, and she was from Carrollton, Texas. A year ago, she was graduating high school. That all happened in the middle of a war that's been going on for about 5 months now. A war that a lot of people have mentally checked out of because it's been going on so long. And that's normal. Wars that tend to drag on tend to lose the news cycle's attention because it's tiring to hear of the violence and all of the struggle that comes with conflict, even while it's still happening. And my job today isn't to relitigate whether this war was right or wrong. It's to ask something much simpler. Does what we're being told about it, that it's working and that it's close to being resolved, actually line up with what's happening on the ground? So today, let's look closer. The war started February 28, 2026. The US and Israel struck Iran after an earlier round of talks between the two sides broke down. Since then, 5 straight months of fighting on and off, stretches where it looked like things were calming down, followed by fresh rounds of strikes. Iran's response early on was to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil shipping routes on the planet. A huge share of the world's oil moves through that one narrow stretch of water. Since then, the US has been running regular strikes aimed specifically at Iran's ability to keep threatening ships trying to get through. This isn't a story that happened and ended. It's still going. Every single night, right now, while you're watching this. As of this recording, CENTCOM says it's completed 11 consecutive nights of strikes on Iran. In their own words, quote, CENTCOM assets targeted Iranian military operation centers, maritime capabilities, aircraft hangars, drone storage facilities, and military logistics infrastructure to further degrade Iran's ability to threaten commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM also says that over the past 3 months, Iran has attacked more than 30 commercial shipping vessels in the strait. Since May, they say they've helped more than about 900 commercial ships and 450 million barrels of crude oil through it anyway, despite these attacks. And it's worth to be clear here. This is CENTCOM's own characterization. Words like unwarranted and aggression, that's the US military describing its own mission. It's not a neutral referee's play-by-play, and it should not be treated as such. Here's where it actually gets harder to pin down. Ask different sides how many people this war has actually cost, and you will get very different answers. These are the numbers as of when I recorded this. The US says roughly 15 to 17 of its own service members have been killed in action. Iran says over 3,400 of its people have been killed, with more than 26,000 injured. The United States and Israel say that 6,000 military personnel alone have been killed. A human rights monitoring group tracking this independently puts Iran's toll around 3,600. This isn't unusual for a war. Every side has an incentive to shape the numbers in its favor. Higher enemy casualties make you look like you're winning. Lower numbers on your own side will do the same thing. But what's unusual here is how wide the gap is, because we're not talking about a few hundred people of disagreement, we are talking about thousands. The lesson isn't nobody knows anything, it's that the casualty figure with a source attached to it is basically meaningless. Next time you see a number in a headline about this war, the first question worth asking is, whose number is that? Quick pause. If this kind of breakdown is useful for you, this is what Look Closer is going to be like every week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, back to Iran. At the exact same time, all of this fighting has been happening, there's also been an entire parallel diplomatic track running. Doha, the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, a session at a resort called Bergenstock in Switzerland. Both sides, the United States and Iran, have called this progress more than once publicly on the record. So you've got 2 totally different stories running at the same time about the same conflict. One where things are being worked out diplomatically, and one where the war hasn't paused for a single day. On July 1st, President Trump said this in the same breath, quote, "As far as things are going, the denuclearization of Iran is moving well. We hit them hard, but we're getting along very well." We hit them very hard and we're getting along very well. Back to back, from the same person about the same relationship. Vice President Vance, that same week, said something similar. The talks are going well, he said, but he wouldn't rule out a full return to military action. That decision, he said, is in Iran's hands. Even outlets covering this straight out of the middle were skeptical. Axios' own assessment at the time was that the original deal collapsing looked more likely than the two sides reaching a final agreement. Iran's own leadership hasn't sounded much more confident. Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf said that Iran is ready for war, and that Iran is, quote, not negotiating with a friend. Iran's supreme leader said that Trump's signature on the agreement is, quote, utterly worthless and devoid of credibility. Neither side is selling this as a sure thing, even while they're still both showing up to the table. So, which of these is the real story? The talks that keep producing statements about progress, or the war that hasn't paused once for them? Congress itself seems unsure. On Thursday, the House voted 214 to 208 to pass a war powers resolution directing the president to remove forces from Iran. The Senate voted on a similar measure that same day, and this isn't the first time a nearly identical resolution passed the Senate back in June. None of it is binding, and the war has continued anyways. July 14th. Trump threatens in an interview to hit Iran's power grid directly if the attacks on shipping in Hormuz don't stop. Shortly after, Reuters reports something Iran hadn't said publicly, that it quietly told the Houthis in Yemen, if the US hits our power infrastructure, you shut down the Bab el-Mandeb. That's a completely different body of water than Hormuz. It's on the other side of the region entirely, between Yemen and the Horn of Africa, connecting the Red Sea to the rest of the world. Then, on Monday, July 20th, the Houthis actually did announce a blockade of that strait. Ships are already rerouting. But here's the part that doesn't quite line up. The Houthis didn't say it was about Iran's power grid at all. They said it was about Saudi Arabia. Retaliation for a Saudi blockade on Yemen and a Saudi strike on an airport in Sana'a. An eye for an eye, they called it. So, which is it? Was this really about the fight with Saudi Arabia, like the Houthis say, or was it Iran's instruction, shut this down if the US ever hits our power grid, the real reason with the Saudi dispute just giving them public cover? Nobody's saying on the record which one actually triggered it, and either way, the result is the same. A major oil route just got constrained on top of the first, and on Thursday, it escalated further. Houthi forces attacked 2 oil tankers in the Red Sea, and oil prices have now crossed $100 a barrel. Roughly 7% of the entire world's oil output moves through that strait. That's now constrained too at the same time Hormuz already is. And it didn't stop there. That same week, Trump escalated again, saying the US will destroy a bridge or power plant in Iran for every single ship it hits in Hormuz. He also said the US would strike a fortified underground site called the Pickaxe Mountain, near the city of Natanz, quote, pretty soon. Every time one side escalates, the other side has something new lined up in response. That's not a system moving toward an ending, that's just a system moving. So why keep fighting over a strait at all? Here's the president earlier that same week at a high school in Georgia, quote, if you combine us and Venezuela, we have about 62% of the world's oil market. So we don't need straits, we don't need anything. We don't need the Strait of Hormuz, end quote. And then in the same breath, but we do it because we have to do it. Because we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon, end quote. That connects the whole episode back together. The strikes, the talks, the blockade, all of it framed by the person running it as being in service of one single goal, stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So, does everything that's actually happened this week move that goal forward, or does it mean that the war keeps going one day at a time? Talks keep happening, and so does the war. 2 choke points are constrained now instead of 1, and 4 more families went it over this week. So, which one of these is where this is actually headed? That's not me for to tell you. Look closer and decide for yourself. I'm an independent reporter. There's no network behind me, no editor above me, just me trying to get this right every week. And if you found this useful, if it made you look at something a little closer than you would have otherwise, that's really the whole point. And if you want to see more of it, subscribing is genuinely all it takes. No paywall, no catch, just come back next week. I'm Elijah Iraheta. Thank you for watching.